Hi, my name is Gintaras Kardokas. I'm Microsoft Azure Business Lead at Also. Today, we are going to talk about Azure Hybrid Benefit. I will start briefly talking about Azure Business Opportunity, and then we'll discuss how Azure Benefit works. After that, I will talk about licensing principles and show some calculations of savings using Microsoft Dedicated Calculator. After that, Microsoft MVP Aldis Urgles will demonstrate how to manage Azure Hybrid Benefit and how to use Azure Migrate. I will finish up with a couple of words about how Also can help partners to accelerate their Azure service business. Did you know that Microsoft Azure recently celebrated its 10 years anniversary? Originally, Microsoft Azure was launched in the 1st of February of 2010. And over the years, more and more Azure services had been added. Today, Azure is the leading commercial cloud that is used for the thousands of customers around the world. In recent financial results release for the quarter ending in December 2019, Microsoft reported that Azure services revenue has been growing at a staggering rate of 62% year over year. This is a fantastic opportunity, particularly if you account that Gartner forecasts global IT services market grew by only 1.1% only. So, if you want to grow your services business, Microsoft Azure is very attractive business to enter in, and we at Also are absolutely committed to help you with reseller growth their Azure-based services. Therefore, I'm very glad to talk about Azure Hybrid Benefit today. While thousands of customers are moving to the Azure, there is still massive untapped market opportunity left. So, what's the most common customer's objection against moving to the Azure? Typical objections related to the risk of migration, such as unclear or high cost of Azure, paying double for on-premise licenses and Azure at the same time while migrating. Typical objections are related to the risk of migration, such as unclear or high cost of Azure, paying double for on-premise licenses and Azure at the same time while migrating, concerns about being able to complete migration on time, then sometimes there is additional concerns about which platform to choose or how to start. And finally, there is still customers that are concerned about security of Microsoft Azure. So, what's so special about Azure Hybrid Benefit? Azure Hybrid Benefit answers almost all customer concerns, and it enables customers to move to the cloud on their own terms. First, customers can make massive savings. We'll discuss this later in more details. But here, I want to say that savings can reach up to 82% in some scenarios. Second, because of the changed Microsoft product terms, now customers can use their licenses on existing infrastructure and on Azure for up to 180 days. Earlier, it was limited to 30 days only. I think you will agree that half year for the migration is more than adequate in major of migration scenarios. Moreover, in case you are eligible for Microsoft Datacenter Hybrid Benefits, you can keep on-premise and Azure licenses permanently. So, all in all, hybrid benefits make migration to the Azure a very easy decision to make. Let's now go on into more details how customers can save big with Azure Hybrid Benefit. First, Azure Hybrid Benefit allows customers to pay only for compute or infrastructure part of the Azure services. Second, it provides significant savings if used with Azure reserved instances. Third, it provides the best and easiest way to solve security and compliance issues related to end-of-support product, such as Windows Server 2008 or SQL Server 2008. And finally, fourth, saving originates from possibility to run Windows and SQL Server on-premise and on Azure at the same time. Let's review each of these items separately. If you use cloud from any cloud provider, you're required to pay for two basic components. One is infrastructure or compute component, and then there is licensing cost for your respective licenses. With Azure Hybrid Benefits, you pay for infrastructure only. Here is important things to keep in mind. These type of savings are available on Microsoft Azure Cloud. On any other cloud would be required to pay a license cost on the top of infrastructure cost. As a result, cost of running the same services on AWS would be up to 5 times more expensive. Another significant Azure Hybrid benefit is handling end-of-support issues. As you know, on January 14, Microsoft ended support for Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2. Half a year ago, support was ended for SQL 2008 and 2008 R2. Migration to later version of respective server is one way to mitigate security and compliance risk. However, Azure Hybrid Benefit provides other options. If customer move the same server to Microsoft Azure Cloud, they get free security updates for another 3 years after end of support date. If you ask me, virtualizing servers and taking them to the cloud is far the easiest and simplest of the options. There is a good number of customers running expired version of servers. Therefore, I would recommend reaching out and discuss this option with them. Before we go further, I would like to stop here and talk a bit about competition. If you compare the cost of moving to the cloud, Azure Benefit makes Microsoft Azure offering up to 5 times cheaper. Where the price difference is coming from? First of all, you don't need to pay for the license part of the service again. This is providing the most of the savings. And the second, if your migration scenario involves migrating recently expiring products, you get additional saving from extended security updates that you would need to purchase otherwise. The next one is exciting thing. Some of you perhaps have heard that it was allowed to run your Windows or SQL Server for 30 days both on-premise infrastructure and on Azure at the same time. In August 2019, Microsoft updated its product terms. Now licenses may be assigned to the both on-premise and on Azure for the period of 180 days for migration purposes. Just think of it. Customer can now legally run their Windows and SQL Server for half a year while migrating to the cloud. This significantly reduces the cost and risk of migrations and eliminates many of the objections that customers had against migration to the cloud. In fact, I imagine that might be a number of customers who would be interested in getting Azure Hybrid Benefit just because of this one benefit. This is a really important thing, and I would like to stress again that nothing like that is available on other competing clouds. A typical way to pay for Azure VM is to pay for every hour they operate. This is an excellent model for the workloads that they need to scale up and scale down. However, if your customer have stable workloads that they need to run continuously, as it is typical in a data center model, Microsoft offers to purchase reserved instances. Reserved instances is Microsoft Azure offering that allows to receive significant discount on compute component of Azure. However, Microsoft is asking either annual or 3-year commitment in return for this discount. Now, if you combine reserved instances pricing together with the saving that you get from Azure Hybrid Benefit, together it can provide savings up to 80%. These kind of savings customers can get when compares the cost of pay-as-you-go 3 years cost versus using Azure Hybrid Benefit for Windows Server with Azure reserved instances for the same 3-year period. I hope by now we all see that Azure Hybrid Benefit is indeed a very important benefit worth knowing and explaining to your customers. But which customers are actually eligible for Azure Hybrid Benefit? First of all, customers need to have active software assurance in place for Windows Server Standard or Datacenter Editions and SQL Server Enterprise or Standard Core versions. Second, they need to have core licenses. Server and core license model unfortunately is not eligible. Hybrid Benefit can also be used on Azure Dedicated Host. Let's now look into more details related to Windows Server. There is a specific rule in place how on-premise licenses converts to Azure Virtual Machine licenses. Each 2-processor license or a set of 16 core licenses are entitled up to instances on up to 8 cores or one instance up to 16 cores. At first, the table on the slide may seem complicated, but in fact it illustrates the rule in quite an obvious way. So let's say you want to run 2 VMs of 4 cores each. For that, you would need one Windows Server license. Why? Because according to the rule, one Windows Server license converts to up to virtual machines, which is the case here, and up to 16 cores. This is the case, you only need 4 cores for one Windows Server license sufficient. The limiting factor here is the number of virtual machines. Another example. I want to run 5 virtual machines of 16 core each. In this case, I need 5 Windows Server licenses because each license allows to run 2 virtual machines with up to 16 cores, and then number of cores is the limiting factor in this case. Finally, if I wanted to run 10 VMs with 64 cores each, I would need 40 Windows Server licenses. Here is the limiting factor is the number of the cores. Each license allows using up to 16 cores. So to meet core requirements, I would need 4 Windows Server licenses for each VM. In total, I would require 40 Windows Server licenses in this scenario. A special licensing case if you have Windows Datacenter Edition licenses. You might remember that Datacenter Edition customers have unlimited virtualization rights. They can apply hybrid benefits either to individual VM or the entire host. When allocated to Azure Dedicated Host services by VM, Datacenter Edition licenses also allows for simultaneous usage both on-premise and in Azure. We now discuss the licensing principle for Windows Server. Let's move on and talk about principle of allocating SQL Server licenses from on-premise to the Azure cloud. Allocating SQL licenses to Azure is pretty straightforward. For one SQL standard license core, you get one general purpose vCore. For one enterprise license core, you get one business critical core. Additionally, you can convert one enterprise license core to 4 general purpose cores. This is sometimes also referred to as Virtualization Benefit. You may be asking at this point, Ginteras, what exactly is vCore? vCore stands for Virtual Core. This concept was introduced back in 2018, and it represents certain computing power in the cloud. It is equal to the logical CPU available for the server. However, similarly, as there are different generations of CPUs, there are different generations of vCores as well. In general, vCore is the simplest way to understand the compute requirement in the cloud in comparison to what customer would be using on the premise today. So it makes right-sizing your destination environment in the cloud much easier, and you pay only for what you use. Let me summarize the licensing principles for Azure Hybrid Benefit. Azure Hybrid Benefit allows converting on-premise licenses with active software assurance to Azure Cloud licenses. Each Windows Server license grants up to 2 virtual machines with up to 16 cores. SQL licenses are converted to vCore licenses with one standard or enterprise license, converting to one standard or enterprise vCore respectively. Additionally, one enterprise license core can be converted to 4 general-purpose vCores. Azure Hybrid Benefit can be used on Azure Dedicated Host too. Dual use rights allows to run Windows and SQL servers locally, and on Azure, one time period up to 180 days. Server and CA licensing model is not eligible for Azure Hybrid Benefit. I hope you got good understanding of what licensing principles apply for Azure Hybrid Benefit. Anytime you feel need support with the licensing, I invite you to reach out to your local ALSO representative. Our specialists are well prepared to answer all your licensing inquiries regarding Azure Hybrid Benefit scenarios. When discussing Azure Hybrid Benefit, many of your customers are likely to ask more detailed calculation of exact savings. As it is typical with Microsoft, there is exactly a dedicated tool to do exactly that. Let me now quickly run a short demonstration showing how you can easily estimate customers' actual savings from using Azure Hybrid Benefit. Before we plan migration to Azure, let's use Azure Hybrid Benefit Savings Calculator. You'll see 2 parts. One part is where you can provide configuration of your machine, and the other side you'll see the benefit and the total cost running it. You'll see 3 options. Windows Server Virtual Machine, SQL Server on Virtual Machine, and SQL Database. If we look at Windows Server Virtual Machine, we select the number of cores we need. In this case, it's 40 cores. If you have 40 cores license with software assurance, you can apply them, and then you could choose a region and, most important, the size of the machine. If you run some small system, then D12 plan is okay for you. But if you are running something more serious, then probably you'll need to use some other plans, like DS13 or 14, it's up to you. Let's take an example, this plan, and then immediately you'll see how this changes the price in terms of monthly cost and your benefits. In this case, almost 30% of savings using existing Windows Server licenses. For virtual machine especially, you need to understand and estimate how many hours you will run this machine. For example, if you prepare this machine for test and dev environments, you'll probably will run only during the working time, when it will cost 3 times less. Around 200 hours, and then the price will drop 3 times, so be careful choosing the hours. Let's go to the next option, and it's SQL Server on Virtual Machine. We can apply SQL Server license and Windows Server license. And we see that again, if we look at the number of cores, we will use the region. It's very important parameter is the license. If you use the standard license, you will see that actual costs are very low, so be careful and understand what kind of licenses you need. And let's again choose wisely plan what is needed for this. And let's say that for operating system, for some enterprise system, DS Plan 12 or high is recommended. And again, choose carefully the number of hours you will run for estimate. And do remember, this is just estimate. The actual running cost you will see on your Azure Cost Administration at the end of every month. You'll see that it's possible to save up to 85% if you use Windows Server and SQL Server licenses. The third and final option is SQL Database. You can convert your core licenses to virtual cores. There are available Generation 4 and Generation 5 vCores. We can see their price per core bucket. And if you use different generation purpose or business critical vCores, it will also change the price. In this case, we see the savings are up to 35%. There is another more advanced calculator to calculate the cost of all kinds of Azure services. It's mostly used when you need to configure some more complex infrastructure, or you are looking for the price for some specific service. Like we find recently released Azure Synapse Analytics service, or we want to find Active Directory or other services. You'll find all the Azure services here and see their pricing. This tool is for architects because usually it will use some more specific scenarios of the architecture you want to build. There are Azure stencils and Azure architecture principles that are used. After you build your architecture blueprint, you can come here and just click on all these services that are in your architecture and prepare different pricing options. Let's take cognitive services. That's actually a machine learning pre-trained artificial intelligence that you could use for your site. If we click on it and select it at the bottom, there is a collection of all selected services. In this case, it's only the cognitive service, and you could select, for example, is it question answer maker, or an example, this is translation service understanding language, or the form recognizer. Then you provide instance there, and you can see the pricing instance per pages and documents, and you will see the subtotal. It shows the actual price for this service and its price per month. You could select another service, like virtual machines. And then again, you'll find this virtual machine at the bottom here. You see the region, operating system, is it Windows or Linux? Or additional pre-built images you can use. And of course, the most important is to select some capacity plan for your virtual machine size. Like DS, the most popular virtual machines, and you could select the billing option, and you can choose is it pay as you go, where you can see the monthly billing, or you can choose 1 year as reserved instance, and it will dramatically influence your price for this virtual machine. There are several additional options. Like for this virtual machine, you can see 3 options of disks. Of course, if you need a reliable solution, you need reliable virtual machine. Then choose Premium SSD disk and choose a needed plan and size of this SSD disk. Again, you will see the total amount for this machine and can provide additional parameters to have the total price for your chosen infrastructure. In the same way, you can add other services like applications, Azure functions, or databases. Here you can find all Azure services. Here I would like to stress again and again, that's the best to be very careful with Azure Calculator. It's quite common that if customer or the partner with limited experience do the calculations, they often choose configuration that in fact more expensive than they would need to be for the given workload. At any time when you need calculations, I really encourage you to reach out local ALSO representatives and involve trained specialists right from the start. Now I would like to invite Aldis Urglis to show some demonstration on how to activate hybrid use benefit and how to use Azure Migrate to support migrations. Aldis is Microsoft MVP since 2010, and he is one of the leading experts on Microsoft Azure.
Thank you, Gintaras. Today I will demonstrate how to enable Azure Hybrid Benefit, and I will also show some basic principles how to migrate your workloads to Azure using Microsoft Azure Site Recovery and Azure Migrate. And now let's look at demo how you could use Azure Hybrid Benefit to reduce overall costs running your virtual infrastructure, whether you use a migrated virtual machines or created new from scratch. And if we go to virtual list of virtual machines you have in your Azure subscription, here you have a list of 7 virtual machines, and we could add using edit columns. There's an additional column that will show that what is our Azure Hybrid Benefits, applied or not. So we add this column, and currently we see that only for one machine, Windows Server 1, there is enabled Azure Hybrid Benefit. And let's do it for second machine. So we go to the machine and use Configuration tab, and here you see that there is an Azure Hybrid Benefit section. So what it means that if you have the Windows Server license with software assurance, you could click yes here, and you will reduce overall cost of running this machine up to 55%. You need to click a checkbox, I confirm, and click Save button. It will take a couple of seconds to update and apply the Azure Hybrid Benefit for this machine and reduce overall costs. And if you go back to Azure virtual machine list, you see that now it's enabled in the Azure Hybrid Benefit is also enabled for Server 2. And let's look how to do it for the machine that you are creating from scratch. And if you say create new resource, and for example Windows Server 2016 Datacenter, and then during creation of this machine you could provide you need to provide different information, but at the bottom you see here there is If you have already Windows Server license, you again could click yes. In this case, you see even a percentage you will save using Azure Hybrid Benefit. So again, if you have a Windows Server license with software assurance, you could just click yes, click confirm, and proceed to the next stage. And this is how to use Azure Hybrid Benefit for new virtual machines and already migrated virtual machines using Azure Migrate. And one of the prerequisites of Azure Hybrid Benefits is, of course, the ease and flexibility of migration of our existing infrastructure to Azure. Previously, we used a couple of services, but recently, in Azure, we have the one centralized and common service for all the migrations we want to do. And it's called Azure Migration. So if we open Azure Migrate, we see that it provides three types of migrations, end-to-end migrations that actually we could create the project for migration and do assessment, do migration, and do monitoring of our migration. And of course, during this process, we can use Azure Hybrid Benefit, providing our on-premise licenses with software assurance to reduce costs of Azure infrastructure. And there are three options for migration: Windows and Linux servers. Of course, the Azure Hybrid Benefit is applied only for Windows machines, SQL and other databases, and other scenarios. And if we go to the servers section, we see that there is a created project for discovery of our on-premise infrastructure. And if we click discover, we see that we could download OVA file and put on our infrastructure and discover all the virtual machines and virtual infrastructure that we could migrate to Azure. And there is a migration tools provided by different suppliers, not only Microsoft, so you could choose from the list. And same for assessment tools. There are more than one assessment tool available for your virtual infrastructure from different suppliers. And that is, during this migration process, you will be able to provide and use your Azure Hybrid Benefit. And if we look at database part, the same works here. So we could create a project with migration, assessment, and migration tool. And let's look at the SQL Server migration tool called Microsoft Migration Assistant. And if we create migration project here, not touching assessment project, just migration. Let's call it migrate. And to apply, to use Azure Hybrid Benefit, we need to migrate this SQL on-premise SQL Server to only one of these options, and it is SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machine. So if we want to apply Azure Hybrid Benefit to SQL Server Windows machine on SQL servers that runs on Windows machine, the OS, so we need to use this option because from the hybrid benefit perspective, there is two parts on Azure Cloud. What we have, it's an OS operating system part and compute part, the hardware actually. And what hybrid benefit covers, it is this OS part. So as we've seen in previous examples, if we provide a license with software assurance, Windows Server license with software assurance, we could save up to 55% of our infrastructure costs on Azure. That's it from my side. Gintaras, now back to you.
Thank you, Aldis. By the way, when preparing this webinar, we also decided to put together 3 additional videos, each explaining one very relevant Microsoft Azure use case for SMB customer. These videos are available on demand, and you will get links to those videos in your email. These videos cover taking legacy system to the cloud, backup and disaster recovery scenarios on Azure, and also optimizing on-premise infrastructure with the Azure Cloud. As I mentioned early in the video, also is fully committed to helping resellers start and successfully run their Azure-related service business. In fact, also made significant investment in the Azure business and we have dedicated Azure Center of Excellence. What is the Azure Center of Excellence? This is a team of Azure certified professionals working with pre-sales and providing technical support. These professionals are located locally, and we do have a larger team in Riga. We extensively use train-the-trainer approach, which means that our experts are working to enable partners and hand over the knowledge in the process. We provide partner guidance through all customer cloud journey. We are making sure that partners can successfully deliver Azure solution for their customer. What are some typical partner services we provide? We do quite a bit of partner training. Our experts helping with existing infrastructure and cost assessments. We also help with migration and architecture design and provide post-migration optimization support. Probably the best also offer to accelerate resellers' Azure service business is our proof of concept offer. What does it mean? It means that for qualified proof of concept opportunities, our engineers will work together with you to choose the right tools, an approach to assess customers' current on-premise environment, and prepare solution architecture to take customer solution to the Azure cloud in the most optimal way. After that, our engineers would prepare a detailed migration plan. Migration plan would be performed by you, a partner. However, our engineers would be providing post-migration support to make sure that the goals of the project are met. Apart from supporting you with engineering expertise, we also provide a free Azure credit for the value for up to 10,000 euro for the qualified project. This is excellent opportunity to accelerate your Azure business and to reduce implementation risk. The best way to accelerate your Azure business is reaching out to your local ALSO representative and have a conversation. Resellers that are new to ALSO, I would invite to visit also.cloud and to register. You will be contacted by local ALSO representative very soon. Additionally, if you have been selling open licenses, your local ALSO representative will be able to provide you with the list of your customers who are eligible for the Azure Hybrid Benefit. Of course, we can only provide this data for the licenses that were purchased from ALSO. Thank you for participating in this webinar.